Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Super Feeler podcast. My name is Lori, and I'm super excited today to be joined by Michelle, who is a person with lived experience and has the most beautiful Instagram page that I have ever seen called The Mindful Wildflower. And I'm super excited to get to chat with you because you're local. And yeah, I feel like our stories probably have a lot of interconnections. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm fairly newly local. I moved out to BC about 2 years ago. And that's kind of the start of my BPD journey as official BPD. So obviously it started long before that, but that's kind of what the catalyst of kind of figuring out the diagnosis and really falling into a place where I was ready to dive into really creating a life worth living, as the DBT slogan goes. I had come from a job that I wasn't really loving anymore. I had been working kind of nonstop, really trying to find my whole sense of self within that job. And so realized that that wasn't much of a life for a 30-something-year-old and wanted more. So I kind of on a whim went to visit my brother in New York City, and always had said, I'm a small town girl. I would never live in the big city. And visited my brother and had the absolute best time. He had so many friends. He had this great network of people that you could tell just really supported him, loved him, and he was just, you could tell he was alive and living. And I felt like that was something I didn't have at that time. And so I thought maybe I shouldn't rule out big cities. And so I thought Vancouver's got mild temperatures, mountains, ocean, all things that I love. And so really it was, I came home from that, and 9 days later was like, I think on the road, or it was like 2 weeks later was on the road and moving to BC. So a little spontaneous, a little little reckless sometimes, but very, very happy with the decision. Ended up finding another job that didn't really fit, and ended up quitting that job without having something else. And that's where the Mindful Wildflower started from. Was really just step after step trying to find a life that I find is worth living, and something that gets me out of bed every day. And really that's what the Mindful Wildflower has been. It's been something that I'm really passionate about, the DBT skills that we're learning, and that we talk about all the time. I find they're so hidden. It's something that you don't see or hear very often. It's something that I didn't hear about until I was in my 30s, and would have been so helpful in my high school years and my college years when people were different and I felt different. And it would have been so great to have those skills earlier on. And so my passion now is just helping to get those skills to be out in the open a little bit more, to help people understand them more. And truly, I think they're skills that everyone can use, not just for BPD. They're really quite simple skills. They're very complex, but they boil down to be very simple, and you use them daily on a regular basis. And the things that, yeah, other people may just take for granted of a skill that just comes naturally to them. Whereas, yeah, we might just have to work a little harder at it.
Yeah, and you're doing such a great job of distilling them into something that's really simple and like aesthetically pleasing, which I think is so important, right? Because the traditional DBT stuff, dialectical behavior therapy, I always try and say it at least one time in an episode, is not pretty. Super beneficial, saved my life. I love it to bits, but it's not like nice to look at. And so what I love about what you're doing, and there's a lot of other amazing creators that are doing some really cool stuff around DBT as well, is like you're making it something that I want to look at. And I would assume, just because I know this is how I'm feeling about our DBT skills series on this podcast, is that going through the skills to distill them down in a different way is also super beneficial to you in terms of like putting new pathways together, like, and just reminding yourself of skills that you might not have remembered.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's been so helpful. And that was a big reason of A, why I started it, but B, why I kept going with it, is I lose motivation real quick. I have ADHD, was diagnosed this past year. So I have lots and lots of ideas, but I don't always stick with them. And I think what's been different about the Mindful Wildflower is it's been so, I wouldn't say easy to stick with, but it's been much more needed to stick with, because I just need the skills. And so, especially going through this time where I had quit my job, I'm technically unemployed right now, and through quitting my job, it also ended a relationship that I was in. And so there was just a lot of chaos. I ended up moving back home to Ontario for a couple of months for the holidays. And just a couple of months where my sense of self had completely fallen in on itself. The things that I usually would identify myself, my career, my partner,
Right.
those things were all of a sudden gone. And so I had no choice but to work on these DBT skills, and or I was just going to be miserable. And so really that line of a life worth living, create a life worth living, has really been what motivates me and what keeps me going. Is when I have those days that are just shit and I can't get out of bed and just or don't want to get out of bed, I can just think to myself, is this life worth living? And it's very clearly not. I'm
Yeah.
very clearly miserable. And so I'm the only one that can change that. And so what steps can I do? What skills can I do? And a lot of times just going to, okay, I'm gonna create another sticker, or by the time this podcast comes out, I think I will have launched
Yeah.
that I'm also creating a card deck that has DBT skills on each card. So there will be 4 separate decks for each of the modules, and a separate affirmation deck. So super excited about that. But yeah, it's been going through literally every single DBT skill that there is. So I've
Yeah.
really had to go in depth with them, and has been really good just to learn them even deeper myself.
Oh, that's so exciting. Okay, I want a copy of that immediately when it's out. And then you have the stickers. Do you have the stickers with you? I know they're literally
I
in the
do.
mail to my house, but do you want to show people them?
Yeah, so
Because they're so
sorry,
cool.
there's one. So the stickers as well, I've started creating. This is the first draft, so they will change a little bit, but there's a few just kind of fun stickers. I'm not my thoughts, check the facts. There's going to be a wise mind one. And then there's other ones that are for journaling. So they're intended to help you use your skills more often. So this one's just kind of a checklist. If you used the skills that week, you can kind of check them off, or if you want to use it more of a daily basis. We've got a today's positive experience. So again, just kind of keeping you looking at those positive experiences in your life. Got an opposite action, and how did you do it all the way? Because that's the most important part of opposite action. And then the emotions. And for this one, you just write down the number of the intensity that you felt the emotion that day, or that week, or whatever you want to use it as. But yeah, just some fun stickers to be able to journal with, and just to, as you said, like the aestheticness of it, sometimes just that's what we need. We
Yeah.
need a little motivation of like, I want to do something pretty and I want to do something creative. And so honestly, that's what motivated me to get going. And on my DBT stuff was I created a bullet journal and thought, I really just want to like do something fun and pretty, but DBT, I want it to be helping me. So I
Yeah.
decided I'd just create these stickers on my own, and they're going to be for sale soon. Hopefully, by the time the podcast
Yay.
airs, they'll be available.
Well, why don't we time this so that we can say definitively that it is going to be out when this episode
Perfect.
comes out, and then we'll just time it based on that. I love the stickers because for those of you who haven't participated in dialectical behavior therapy, one like key component of it is called a diary card. And you know what? I'm just gonna like, this is random, but sometimes I feel like my entire life is just a collection of various DBT related materials. So this is a DBT book that like a binder that I had from January, this is 2015. So more than 10 years ago. And I still have this here, which is absolutely wild. And I haven't actually gone through it, but that would be very interesting to like go through and see what I had written. So I'm just going to pull this one out. So this is the diary card that my program used. But like this compared to what Michelle has, very different look and like very different motivation of wanting to fill it out. You know what I mean? And I mean, obviously this is much more detailed. I mean, it's 2 full pages of things that you're doing every week, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. Do you know what I mean? And I actually found that the diary cards were really helpful for me when I was going through DBT the first time, because it was allowed me to like think about what emotions I was feeling. And that's something that I don't think we talk about enough, and we definitely haven't talked about enough on this podcast, is that a lot of people with borderline have a really hard time figuring out what their emotions are and being able to name them.
Yeah.
And that was like That was a huge component of dialectical behavior therapy when I was going through it. Um,
Yes,
so being able to do that checklist and rate your intensity and stuff is such a cool, fun sticker to have. What's annoying for me is I like journal digitally. So I'm like, but I know most people don't. I think I'm just unique in that aspect because I'm not like a visual person, so it doesn't matter to me. It's just my notes on my phone, but so cool. Okay, so then can we maybe backtrack? Do you want to tell us about like your childhood? Like, what did mental illness look like for you? Did you have inklings that you had something wrong with, not wrong with you? I shouldn't I shouldn't use that word, but like that you were different and struggling when you were younger that eventually kind of became more clear?
for sure. I remember as a young kid just struggling to figure out what to do with my emotions. And one thing that I remember that I still think back at it, and now I know exactly where it comes from, but I still look back at it and go, what on earth was I doing? But it's so clear now why I was doing that was I was angry and I felt like I needed to let it out somehow. And so what I did was I put water balloons in a glass jar and I went out to our driveway and I smashed it on the ground. And
Interesting.
it's
Yeah.
a great way to release some anger, but what a weird thing for
Yeah.
a young kid to do. And so now I can totally see, like, oh, okay, I was a young kid and I had no idea how to process the emotion of anger. And I was just coming up with whatever I could. Was that a little bit of a destructive way to do it? Yeah. Did my parents appreciate the glass on the driveway? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But that was me trying to figure out how to process it.
And how old were you when you think that that was going on?
That would have been pretty young, probably like 8 or 9 years
Yeah.
old.
Isn't that
And
wild? Like
then,
for
yeah,
yeah, to just like we've had different ways or like different intensities of emotions of the people around us for so long. It's just unbelievable.
yeah. And then going into high school was the big kind of turning point when it was just undeniable that I was different from everyone around me and just couldn't figure out. I just all of the time felt like I was on the outside of a secret or something. Like I didn't understand what everyone else was feeling, what everyone else would have been thinking. It just felt like I was on the outside all of the time. And so, really, that transition from elementary to high school, I lost a lot of friends. I also grew up in the church. And so, with BPD, a big part of it is just an unstable sense of self. And with that, we tend to cling to things that give us a sense of self. And so I clung real hard to religion and what I thought was a faith. And that really shaped who I was in a negative way, and in a way that most people from the church wouldn't even say is healthy.
And like how so?
Just where I became so black and white with my thinking. Some
Mm,
people from the church would
yeah,
definitely be like that. But
evangelicals would be thrilled, but yeah.
yes, so there's definitely parts where I just fit into the church really, really well because of that black and white thinking. That parts where there was no gray, and because of that, I have a hard time looking back at who I was then because I can see just that very polarizing thinking and not a lot of grace, not a lot of understanding for that gray area. And so for a long time, I didn't necessarily see it as a bad thing. I just saw it as this is who I am because I'm part of the church, and
Mm.
we were almost taught that you should be different. You should be polarizing. People are going to think differently of you. And so I didn't question as much as I think I would have if I wasn't a part of that.
What kind of
Uh,
religion? Like Christian, Catholic?
Christian, yeah,
Christian. Okay. Cool.
yeah. So a Baptist Christian.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite interesting kind of growing up in that. And then through college, again, went through similar things where just relationships were tumultuous. It was very back and forth with things. I had a college boyfriend tell me that my mind was hell and that I was selfish. And what did he say? My mind was hell and I was a burden to all of my friends.
Jeez.
And it was just a
He sounds
list of
lovely.
all of my, right? All my insecurities that he could come up with. But really, what, like, when I look back at what he said, a lot of it was pointing at my
Yeah.
borderline personality qualities that like, okay, those things kind of are there. I was being selfish and my mind was hell. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
And I just didn't have a diagnosis. And was that a nice way to say it? Of course not.
No.
Awful. Of course he was. Don't speak to a human like that.
Yeah.
But when I look at it, a lot of the things you were saying were things that, yeah, I was dealing with these symptoms. I just didn't know how to properly kind of deal with them. And so it was still another 10 years after that until I actually got a diagnosis. And it wasn't until I came out here and moved to BC that that's when I finally said, you know what, I need an actual psychologist, an actual
Mm.
diagnosis, because I know that there is more to it's not just depression, it's not just anxiety, there is
Yeah.
something here. And that's when I went, and by then I was pretty confident it was borderline. I'd researched enough, and so I think, I don't know if I said the words in the appointment because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't
Yeah. Yeah. You're
telling
not
them that I
biasing
had
them.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted them to tell me. And so, but yeah, ended up being borderline. And then I was able to get into a DBT program, and
Nice.
was able to take the actual course and get some skills in me.
Which is unreal. And so you were diagnosed like recently then?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
It was only
months
2 years ago.
or two? Oh,
11.
years. Okay. 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Year and a half, maybe 2 years.
It
Year and a
makes
half.
me so happy to see people like yourself who have been diagnosed so recently and have already been able to build this up to be something that they're passionate about and that they have a like online community around. That it's just, I might cry actually. I see people coming to the Super Feelers Club, like the peer support we run or whatever, and they're like, I was diagnosed 3 months ago and I just found this. And I'm like, 2015, 2015, I didn't find any of this until I built it because it
Yeah.
just didn't exist. And
Yeah.
you're taking the DBT skills and creating something that's like usable for other people, and like it's just so powerful, and it's going to be such a better healing process, I think, because of what you're doing and because you feel that sense of connection with others and you can build that online. Like it makes me emotional every single time because it's so different. The difference in 10 years. The
I
difference in
hope
10
that
years
it
is
makes
wild.
you emotional because of how much you have brought it to this point. Like
It's
even
a
my own story.
beautiful emotion. It's beautiful emotions. It's just like overwhelming to think about how different things are 10 years
Yeah,
later. That
for sure.
I think
Yeah.
that's the difference for me, is just it couldn't be more different.
Yeah.
In the best way possible. So I know you're going to the Sash Bear Walk, which is, this episode will probably come out after that. But anyways, let's just say we went to the Sash Bear Walk, which is an organization that has come on the podcast as well. And you'll have heard their episode by now. Have you been connected? Like, what's your family's connection point in your life? Like, are they aware of your diagnosis? Are they supportive?
Yeah, very supportive. So my mom took the Sash Bear course. She took it back about 2 or 3 years ago, before, it must be 3 or 4 years ago actually, because it was before I was diagnosed with
Mm.
borderline personality. But she must have known,
Yeah.
because she took the course. And so she took the course and then became a facilitator of the course. And because she was pretty continually connected with them, they have then since asked me to be a lived experience speaker with them several times. So
Awesome.
I've done lived experience for some of their weekend intensives and just for some of their classes that they have. So yeah, we're connected with Sash Bear a little bit here and there, but love the work that they're doing, and thousands of families each year that go through the program to get the support. And same thing. I went to a weekend intensive with them a couple weeks ago, and it was I was getting emotional looking at, there was 86 people on the screen,
Wow.
and it was just amazing to see so many people that. And if you guys don't know, the Sash Bear is the family members of the lived experience people. So it's family members of people with BPD
Mm.
or
Just emotion
emotional
dysregulation. Yeah.
dysregulation. And so they are just people that don't have it themselves, but want to learn and want to support. And I just think that that's the coolest thing. I know the difference that it's had with my mom taking it, and just being able to see the difference in how she's able to validate me so much more and just listen in a different way. So to see, yeah, 86 people online and thousands of people that go through the program just to support their loved ones in a better way, I think that's such a beautiful thing. And yeah, again, something that it's come such a long way from where it was 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's the work they do is incredible. I mean, truly, I'm so glad that they exist and that families can feel so supported, and that your mom probably learned so many awesome things that like really were helpful
For
um,
sure.
by seeking that out. That's so cool. So your diagnosis, I'm kind of jumping all over the place here. I hope that's okay. Your
Okay.
diagnosis process, you said you sought out a psychologist. So we're in Canada, for context for people if you don't know where British Columbia is, we're in Canada. And our access to our mental health system, we have free healthcare. We're very thankful about it, but mental health is a bit different. So I'm curious, like, how did you seek out a psychologist? Did you pay out of pocket? Where did you find them? And what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, great questions, because that's all the questions I had when I was moving out here was
Yeah.
how on earth do I get this help? So at first I just was Googling quite a bit and Googled like where to find a counselor or a doctor
Yeah.
or a psychologist. And so first thing I did was I called, and I forget what the number is, but it's just the health line and
Oh,
you can speak
811.
to a nurse. 811, that's what it
Yeah.
is. So I called 811 and just said, like, where should I start? This is where I'm at. I would like to speak to a psychologist. And they referred me to the Vancouver Assessment Center. And so I called them and they made me an appointment. I think that is when I waited about 8 to 10 months for an appointment. So that was actually pretty quick, I thought.
Yeah. It still sucks, but yeah.
Unfortunately, it's terrible, but yeah, 8 to 10 months was pretty quick. And that's when I was able to speak with a psychologist, and he diagnosed me right there. We spoke for 2 hours and
Wow.
diagnosed me at the end of that session.
Was
And
that
then,
publicly funded? Like you didn't have to pay out of pocket for that?
yeah, I didn't pay anything for that.
Wow. Cool. Yeah. Then that's
Yeah,
not a big wait at all, honestly.
no, yeah. So I was very impressed with kind of how that went. I had much harder time in Ontario. And maybe that was just because I wasn't at the point where I was taking the right steps.
Yeah.
When I moved to BC, I really was like, no, I need a
Yeah.
psychologist. I'm getting this diagnosis. So this is where I'm at.
And honestly,
So it took,
sometimes it's literally just luck. Like
yeah,
you got on the right
it
wait
is.
list and then the person happened to have an appointment and then you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
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 it's both
100%.
perseverance and luck sometimes. And it was a
Yeah.
psychologist or a psychiatrist?
I'm pretty sure they were a psychologist,
Okay, so they
but I
didn't
could be
prescribe you
wrong
any
on that.
medications or anything.
No,
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so psychologist probably. Interesting. Cool.
no. But then, although he did, yeah, he did prescribe me afterwards. So
Oh, maybe it's a psychiatrist then.
must be a
Yeah.
psychiatrist.
So what was it called? Vancouver. I'm just gonna Google it real quick.
Assessment center. And then I met with the psychiatrist,
Yeah.
must be then, for
Yeah, I think
maybe
probably.
5 or 6
Anyway.
weeks after that, and just like to see if the medication was kind of working and the right thing.
And had you been on
And then,
medication before?
yeah, I'd always been on medication for what they said was depression and anxiety.
Always.
Um, so yeah, which is like a lot of them is similar medications that you would take
Yeah.
for BC anyways. So yeah,
So did they
the
like
medication.
did the psychiatrist like change your meds or was it just monitoring that they were like doing the right thing?
He did change them, just because I had requested and said that there was a few symptoms that I wasn't happy with on what I was on, and so and there was a few things that I felt like still weren't being touched by it, and so yeah, we did play around with it a little bit, and we're still kind of playing around with it a little bit. I think right now I'm finally at a good level where I'm on the right meds, but yeah, it took a lot of testing and so frustrating, especially when I find as a single person to figure out like if your meds are working or not, what
Yeah,
they should be doing.
it's so true.
I've even talked to people who like they have a relationship or they're in a relationship and they said, "Oh, my partner was the one that said that the pills are working because of XYZ." And then they're able to have like an outside opinion. But I find when you're all alone, there's not a lot to kind of back and forth with it. You're just kind of lost in knowing is this a symptom? Is this because the weather is nicer? Is this because of this circumstance that's happening? There's so many factors that play into your emotions that tracking those symptoms is so challenging.
I feel like so many of us we don't trust ourselves because we've been told that our emotions are invalid.
Exactly.
So you start wondering, like, am I just overreacting? Is this actually a symptom? Is this a side effect? Is this not? Am I just being a bitch? Like, you know what I mean? There's like so many things. And it's so true. I mean, I don't, this is such a good point. I haven't probably said this on this podcast before, but like, it's really important when you're changing meds to even if you have a teacher or like a boss that's like easy to talk to, or like anybody that you can just be like, hey, I just wanted to give you a heads up. I'm changing my meds. Should be all good. But like, if you notice something weird, can you just let me know?
Yeah.
And you're right. It is so much easier with a partner. But even, any regular contact person that you have sometimes can see a bit of a change. And like med changes they're wild.
They're wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
do you mind me? Sorry, go ahead.
People don't talk about a lot is just med changes and how like the headaches you get, the mood swings that you can get. Like it is such a like debilitating time, or can be such a debilitating time that it's wild that people don't talk about it as much, because you never know, like throughout the day anyone could be dealing with a withdrawal from their medication and just trying to survive and show you or like hide it that they are.
And what super sucks is that like most of the psych meds are like, you have to wait a certain period of time until they work, right? So like any antidepressants, really, it's not a fix where it's like, okay, now I know this is working. It's like 3 weeks of this one to find out that I don't know if it's really working, and then 6 weeks of this one, and then 4 weeks of this. And it's just like such a long drawn out process because of that. Whereas if you were taking like, I don't know, an anti-nausea med, it would be like, it's either working or it's not. You know what I mean? So it's definitely frustrating. Do you mind if I ask you what you're on now?
I'm on escitalopram.
Okay, cool. That's it?
Escitalopram and Abilify, just 5 milligrams of Abilify.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Like escitalopram, I hated. Hated it so much. But so many people are on it. Like, so meds are one of those things. And that's what I always try and normalize, right? Is like, I ask people what meds they're on, not because I'm nosy, first of all, but also because what you're on and what I'm on and what everybody else is on is so different. And when people are like, oh, I want to like seek out like this medication, I'm like, don't go on my medication because you think it's going to work for you, because every single person is different. Yeah. And also like the side effects you're willing to tolerate might be different, and like the intensity of the side effects and the cost, and like there's just so much variety that you can't like, it's not a blanket thing.
Yeah. And a lot of people are on multiple medications, so the way it interacts for one person is different than another person. So
totally.
You really can't go by what someone else is on at all.
No, not at all. So you see the psychiatrist, you get the medication adjustment stuff, it's going okay. Then you get into a dialectical behavior therapy program. What was that, through Vancouver Coastal Health?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. And so was that just groups then, or was that like did you have individual counseling and groups and stuff?
They do groups and they do an individual coach. For the first half, I used their individual coach. For the second half, I had found a counselor that I use privately that I pay for through my insurance. And we just connect really, really well when you have therapists like that.
Yeah, no, you do not let them go. Yeah, I have one like that. I think it's been 8 years. And I'm like, if you ever leave, I am so screwed. Like, I will actually die. So.
Yeah, it takes so long to find a good one, and so much mental energy to find a good one, and
to like build that trust, like share your story enough to build that trust. It's just nothing. Yeah. And there's no point in having two if like, obviously you got to take what you could get, but like if you can have one that's like consistent and that knows you really well, it's easier to kind of like build that trajectory. Yeah. And so I'm going to assume that you found the groups really helpful, given that now you're super passionate about DBT. But do you want to talk about what your group experience was like?
Yeah, so I loved the groups in a lot of ways. There were things that I didn't like about the groups for sure. They are definitely very awkward and they can be uncomfortable to share. And
Yeah.
I actually felt like our facilitators were pretty intense on like you have to do the homework, and it was almost like a if you didn't do the homework, you got shamed for not doing the homework,
Yeah.
which was made me do the homework, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Did other people do the homework
Um,
though? Because I remember
but
like in mine I did the homework pretty like religiously, but other people didn't and they just
Yeah, there were
didn't care.
definitely people that didn't.
Yeah.
And so yeah, there was definitely elements of it that it's publicly funded. And so it's not always going to be the best care, but the skills, if you go into it with, I need these skills, they're amazing. And I swear by the DBT program, by Marshall Linehan's work, I think it's absolutely incredible what has been created. And so I think if you go into it just wanting to learn those skills, you can make pretty much any group work for you. And
Hmm.
there's always going to be people use your DBT skills in the group that you're
Yeah.
working on.
And
And
that's part of the benefit
you're
of
going
the
to be
groups
fine.
is to have that
Exactly.
opportunity to practice being like, wow, this person drives me fucking nuts. I'm going to
Exactly.
I'm going to practice non-judgmental right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah.
And it
Uh
is people that are dysregulated. So
yeah.
sometimes the people will say wild things, and you're yeah, you do have to check your judgmental thoughts. And yeah, it is, I think, really beneficial to hear people that will talk and share stories, and maybe a story that seems like ooh, something so embarrassing that I would never say out loud. Another person's just like, hey, I'm gonna say it, but it's so validating to hear an experience that I wouldn't have even said out loud, and another
Yeah.
person just shares it like it was nothing, is so encouraging, and then makes me check my own, oh, why was I so ashamed of that? Why
Mm,
was I so embarrassed to share that? Or those kind of things. So there's so many benefits to having a group experience that, yeah, I think it's, yeah, even though there's going to be some awkwardness, there's going to be uncomfortableness just sharing with a group of people that you don't know, the benefit, I think, far outweighs those uncomfortable feelings.
totally. Yeah, I think that the groups mean the world. I if you ask the official DBT people, they say like, nope, it's not valid unless you do the official program from start to finish with all. And I'm just like, ah, I get it. I'm sure that like maybe that's potentially more beneficial, but in terms of an access thing, like as long as you're there and you're like, I need this, and I'm willing to put in the work and sit in the discomfort of learning these skills, it can change your life so quickly.
For sure.
I would not be here without dialectical behavior therapy, period. I mean, whether or not I would be alive, don't know, but if I was alive, I'd be in jail. Do you know what I mean? I credit it for everything.
Yeah.
It's funny. I sometimes talk about, just like in the work that I do, like my real job, about, like recovery and abstinence and like the kind of philosophies around those things, and how some people are like so adamant that like you have to be 100% abstinent, or like other people are like harm reduction, whatever. And there's always a bias, right? If you're like in AA and like you're 100% like on an abstinence like track, then like that's what you're going to lean to. And I'm always like 1,000% I agree, because I think dialectical behavior therapy is like the best thing that's ever existed. And I have bought into it hard. And not everybody has, and you obviously have too. Not everybody has, which is fine, and I will always say it changed my life for the better in every possible way. But if it doesn't work for you, it's either not the right time or not the right therapy. And I believe that Marsha Linehan said this devastating but so true quote in her book when she was first developing dialectical behavior therapy. She said, sometimes this therapy is just like not for you. Sometimes this therapy is not at the right time. And sometimes the therapy that you need hasn't been developed yet. And you're like, oh, that's such a sad thought. And that's kind of why dialectical behavior therapy exists, because Marsha was like, there isn't something that fits for me as a person with lived experience. So I'm going to develop the therapy that I need, which, I mean, thank God for her. But a devastating concept when you think about just
not there yet.
Yeah. But I also do think that there's a time and a place for dialectical behavior therapy in that, like, you do have to buy in.
100%. Yeah.
Like, you can't just go and be like, yeah, I hate I mean, there are skills that I'm still like, I hate this skill, but you can't go to groups and just be like, I'm not going to do my homework. I'm not going to do my diary cards. I'm not going to participate. I'm not going to try. And then be like, the therapy didn't work for me. Right? Because it's not going to work for you. It's not the thing that's going to solve the problem. Like, your work in this is going to be the helpful thing, which is super hard when you're in the midst of like crisis after crisis after crisis, or like trying to find housing, or just had your kid taken away, or like, you know, easier said than done. And I understand that I'm like a white woman, cisgendered woman who like lives in a first world country, who has, at the time, I didn't really have family support, but I had a roof over my head. So I understand that like that obviously is going to be easier for me than it is for other people. But it's still just
wildly challenging.
Yeah, truly. I'm really, honestly, I've been holding onto this binder for 10 years. I think I'm going to have to go through it and just like read what I wrote, because I'm sure there's bits where I'm like, I hate this. This is stupid, blah, blah, blah. But yeah. So when did you finish your DBT program?
Still in it.
You're still, oh my God, your therapists must be, or your group leaders must be so proud of you. They're probably like, have you showed them the work you're doing?
No, so I've just restarted. So I did it back in the summer is when I did the first 2 modules.
Okay.
And then I took a break. Well, I guess it was spring and then into the summer. And then in the summer, I was just so busy that I said, okay, I need to take a deferral because I'm not focusing enough on this. And I want to make sure that like I'm fully focused. And so I had just gotten a promotion at work and things were, I thought, going really well work-wise. And then, ended up taking the deferral. And then November is when I quit my job. And so then I kind of had to struggle through. I was like, damn, why did I take the deferral?
Right.
I need these DBT skills. And so then I paused, and then we just restarted actually this past Thursday.
Are there still people that you know from your previous group, or because of the deferrals, it all new people now?
All new people, yeah.
Okay, cool.
So the facilitators are the same, but the members are all new. Which
you have to show them what you're doing.
Yeah, I will for sure.
They will love it. Oh, that's so cool. And can you remind me, what did you do for work again? Like before?
I was previously was in retail management. So I was a store manager with Marshall's, HomeSense, and Winners.
Oh, I love HomeSense.
Yep, spend all my money there still.
Yeah.
And then after that was in sales. So I was working with just as an account manager doing sales, which not my jam. I don't know. That would be
very hard. No, that would be so. I worked commission sales once. Just at La Senza, and it was so competitive and awful. I hated everything about it. And like, I'm a competitive person. I love being competitive, but it was just like nasty competitive and not like...
Yeah, not for the right motive.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm good to be competitive, and I'm good to be like all in, cutthroat, but I want to do it for a reason, for a purpose. And I kept trying to create a purpose at the job that I was at, but with management that wouldn't support it. And my mental health was really taking a dive, and then they let go the only woman on senior leadership, or on the executive leadership team. So I went, all right, not a future for me. I'm gonna go.
Yeah, good for you for knowing what you needed.
Yeah, and I have not been unemployed for months now, and have not regretted it for a second. Even though, I know that there's the classic, BPD, can't keep a job, can't keep a relationship, and then all of a sudden I didn't have both, and it was like, oh, is this the BPD? But I've been so confident that what I'm doing, I made the decisions because I'm creating a life worth living, is because of that, I know that it wasn't the BPD that made those decisions. Yeah.
It was the wise mind.
BPT skills. It was wise minds that made that decision.
Yeah.
And so, I think even the contrast of like that is kind of the stereotype is BPD can't keep a job or a relationship. So the fact that I can find confidence in ending both of those things and not having both of those things and know that it isn't because of my BPD, it's despite of it, it's because of the skills that I have that I made those decisions. I think that's been just, yeah, super encouraging.
Mm. The bit about like the BPD stereotype of like not being able to keep a job is so top of mind for me right now. And I'm so glad you brought it up because that is a stereotype for sure. And I don't think it's an accurate stereotype. I think sometimes like we maybe are really strong in like what we need and that's a good thing. But yeah, how do I word this without getting in trouble? Anyways, I had a moment of like panic recently that I was like, oh my God, what if I lose my job? And then I was mostly panicked because I was like, I don't want to be this like kind of revolving door that like I think people expect. And like I've never been fired before. Like I've been employed since I was 14 consistently. And my husband was just like, dude, chill. Like, you know, like not in like a mean way, but he's like, if this happens, it's not about you. It's a one-time thing and you're going to do what you need to do to be well. It's not, you know, you being a bad employee or like cycling through stuff. So yeah, that is a stereotype that I don't think gets talked about enough, to be honest.
Yeah. And we get so in our heads about it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I was so beating myself up the first 2 months that I was unemployed. I just beat myself up the whole time because I thought, oh, it's because of my BPD or it's because I
I'm
this or
not good
this.
enough or yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, am I ever going to be able to work a job again? Like, of course I am,
Yeah.
but I just get so in my head about it that like, and we hear all these things, the stereotypes about it, that it's like, whoa. But same as you, like I was employed pretty consistently up until that point. And so, yeah, is it a little bit wild that I quit my job without having something? Yes. But I actually really like that quality about myself. I
Yeah.
like that I'm passionate about things and that I know what I'm going to stand up for. I'm really strong in my values. And so, yeah, I'm happy with the decisions made.
Yeah, that's so amazing and I'm so glad that you've been able to frame that way for yourself because it does sound like it was wise mind, not because I mean the emotion mind is like I'm mad at you so I'm going to quit my job or I hate everything about this job so I'm going to quit without a backup plan. But you weren't thinking about a backup plan, you were thinking about your wellness. And that is the ultimate wise mind decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um do you want to talk about your breakup a little bit? Because I breakups often happen around when a diagnosis happens. And so your breakup was after your diagnosis, is that right? Well, how did that come to play? Like, was there any discussion about it? Did it impact your relationship at all?
Yeah, so I actually, this was my first relationship since really my divorce. I went
Oh, I
through
didn't
a
know you were
divorce,
married. Okay.
yeah, about 8 years ago. And this was my first relationship really since then, my first actual relationship that I thought might go somewhere. And so I was pretty transparent with him right from the get-go. So it wasn't a long relationship. We started dating after my diagnosis. And so right from the get-go, I told him, hey, I have BPD. I'm gonna need a little bit more. I will probably try and push you away at some point, and
Yeah.
so I will need some support when that happens. And so he was actually away at the time when I quit my job. He was in Italy,
Hmm.
just vacationing.
Was he supportive
And
of
so
that conversation though?
he was super supportive of the
Nice.
conversation. Yeah, it was very well received. And during the relationship itself, I would say like we had lots of healthy conversations about like my BPD. I was able to just bring things up in a very healthy way. And the relationship itself, I'd say, was very kind and even keeled. We didn't have any really big arguments. We were able to just kind of talk about things. And I think that was because I brought it up right
Yeah.
away that I have BPD. So I'm like, we're going to talk about everything.
I
That's how
tell
it's going to go.
people like all the time to like tell people you have BPD up front Because if you don't, A, you're not going to be able to have those open and honest conversations. B, when they find out eventually, your shit's going to hit the fan. And I mean, I remember I had a boyfriend. Well, boyfriend is a strong word, but anyways, we were like sleeping together on and off for like 2.5 years. So like a pretty long, consistent relationship. And I told him I had BPD like 2 years in. And at that point, everything changed because he was like, oh, yeah, BPD, the exaggeration of fucking everything, blah, 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 blah. And it was like, I'm the exact same person I was for the last 2 years. I just told you the label. My recommendation, and people ask me this all the time, like, should I tell somebody, should I not? Is like, tell them up front, because if you don't and they find out down the road, A, they're going to think you lied to them. And B, if they're going to be a douchebag about it, you might as well find out now.
No upfront. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Wait, don't waste your time. So anyways, sorry, that was a side note. But yeah, so he was in Italy, you quit your job.
Yeah, so then I let him know that I quit my job, and there wasn't a whole lot of reaction to it. So it took a couple of days, and then at that point was like, hello, I'm super upset about this, need some extra support. And by then I was starting to spiral and like, okay, my whole identity was wrapped up in work.
Yeah.
Who am I now? Is this relationship going to last through this? I don't know. Is he thinking this is just a girl with BPD and now she can't keep a job? He had recommended that I keep the job longer and wait until I find something. And so I was like in my head about that. And so I had said to him, like, hey, I really need a phone call. Didn't get the phone call. Asked for several other things, like just to make some time for me so that we could talk about things, so that I could have a little bit of support. And it just wasn't working out for him. He wasn't making it work out. He wasn't giving the time to make it work. And so I said to him, like, I need more from you right now. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, this isn't enough. And so, like, if you can't give any more, then like, I'm at the point where this isn't enough for a relationship for me. And so he said, all right, goodbye. And that was it. And so I was an awful person to break up with. I kept trying to like say, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure?
Story of
I
my
thought we were
life.
in love. What on earth? And so really kept trying to make it work, kept trying to talk to him. He didn't really want to talk through the breakup at all. And so that was very, very hard for me. I want to talk through everything. And at that point, I was then like not sure if I was moving back to Ontario.
Did you live together?
Job. No, we didn't live separately. Yeah, so thankfully that was much easier. It was only about 4 month relationship.
Okay,
so it was
gotcha.
It was quite quick. I think it was just more that it was my first relationship that I really thought this might go somewhere since the divorce. So it did get quite serious quite quick. We said the I love yous, and I thought that we would have made it through this little thing. But yeah, we didn't. And I pushed through afterwards, and now the number is deleted from my phone. I won't contact him again, as much as I may want to, from time to time. But it is done. I've moved on, and yeah, it was tough. It was a tough one through the job loss, because he was the only person I wanted to talk to about the job, because he was the person that really knew where I was at with work. No one else really had the ins and outs that he did at the time. So really wanted to bounce things off of him just about the job even. And so that was tough for me too, just to lose the friendship. More than the relationship was harder for me, I think, was the friendship side of it.
Yeah, I am also a horrible person to break up with, and that does not come up enough either. But not because I want to be a horrible person to break up with, but because I'm like desperate, you know?
Yeah.
Very hard to let go. Yeah. And so did you have like, you've been here, sorry, how long have you been here again? 2 years?
2.5 years in Vancouver.
Do you have like friend groups out here and stuff? Because like I just feel like as an adult making friends in a new place would be very difficult.
So hard. And that was another challenge of, do I come back to BC? Because I did have a few friends, but they were kind of all like right on the cusp of like, are we still going to be really good friends when I come back after I
Mm,
come back from Ontario, or is a couple months away going to be too
right.
much?
Yeah.
And so I did decide to come back, and thankfully, when I came back, it wasn't too much. Those friends really did stick, and ended up becoming a friend group as soon as I came back.
Nice.
Kind of the three kind of randoms that I had kind of all came together and became a little group chat. And then I also have been very intentional just to try and make connections. And so the first time that I lived here, or yeah, the first time that I moved out here, I was in a building and I put up a note that said, anyone want to come and meet for a beer are going to be at the brewery across the street from this time. And so
Love
that's how I
it.
made one of my friends. And then again, when I moved to this place, there was a couple dogs beside, and I have a dog. And so I made some dog treats and gave them to the dogs on either side and wrote a little note and said, do you ever want to go for a dog walk? I'm up for it.
Aw,
And now I'm like best friends with my next door neighbor. My dog's got a best friend. So I think
that's
it's
so
really just about
awesome.
like taking those little steps and doing something that's, yeah, maybe a little uncomfortable, but it's going to help create a life worth living.
Oh, I love that so much. We have so much in common. It's like not even funny. I feel like I could go on for like 12 years about how much we have in common. It's really funny. But I love both of those examples of like how to make friends in like a new place. I always have so much respect for people that move. Like move outside of their situation. Because like it would be so hard to do that. And especially like I mean, I think most people would make their friends at work. So then also you're losing that identity piece and you're losing this potential of like people that you work with all the time,
Yeah,
which is
exactly. Yeah.
super hard to do. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yay. Okay. Well, my final question, as always, what is your favorite part about having borderline personality disorder?
My favorite part is the spontaneity for sure. The kind of impulsiveness, the spontaneity, but yeah, that's what brought me out to BC. And that's what, yeah, kind of makes me who I am, is that kind of impulsive, spontaneous aspect.
Awesome. Oh, so
Yeah.
cool. I love that everybody's answer is different. That's my favorite part. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Your Instagram will be linked in the show notes, of course. Maybe we could even do a little giveaway when your new stuff comes out. So you'll have the card deck, you'll have the stickers. Your Instagram is literally incredible. I love it so much. This episode will come out after the Sash Bear Walk. So by the time it comes out, we'll have met each other in person, which is even more
All right.
exciting. Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, Michelle, and sharing your story with us. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Superfeeler podcast. This episode was recorded on the traditional and unceded territory of the Matsqui and Sumas First Nations. If you'd like to learn more about the Superfeeler podcast, share your story, or participate in the Superfeelers Club, which is our peer support group, it's totally free, virtual, and open to anyone who experiences intense emotions or has borderline personality disorder, please check out the link in our show notes or go to laurieedmondson.com. If you would like to support the show, we would very much appreciate it. There's an option to do monthly small donations at whatever denomination you'd like, and you get bonus content, extra resources, and extra connection to me throughout. That can be found on patreon.com/superfeeler, or again in the notes below. Thanks again, and have a great day.